So it's Monday. I'm freshly back from Texas, less than 24 hours ago, and I don't know what I'm gonna do this week. I've got a week and a half to finish a quilt to stay on track. So I'm gonna go run some errands this morning and hope the inspiration strikes when I get home later today and go dive into the chaos that is my brick room. So stay tuned for that. So here's what we're looking at. Looks nice and organized over here, but then we've got the explosion over here. So somewhere in here, there should hopefully be a TV remote and a Roku remote. Wish me luck. Okay, so today is Wednesday. We're still getting by. We're gonna have a project, I promise. Today was also QuiltCon signups. So if you're a member of the Modern Quilt Guild, you're familiar with what QuiltCon is. It's a big quilting convention. I went for the first time 2 years ago when it was Austin before everything shut down. I guess that was only a year and a half ago in 2020 before everything shut down. So anyways, I will be going in Phoenix next year. I've already got my hotel booked and now I've got my lecture pass and one class and I'm waitlisted for another one. I'm really bummed I didn't get in my long arm class, but here's to hoping however many people in front of me drop out first. They're only allowing 11 people for each long arm class. Like there are a bunch of different slots, but by the time I got to them, they were all waitlisted. So here's to hoping, but I'm excited. It'll be an adventure. And if you're gonna be there, let's say hi to each other in the event hall or at the lectures. I'll be there a lot. Found that to be a really low stress way to experience my first QuiltCon was just to do a lecture pass. And it kind of made the ease of just going where I wanted to go. If I didn't go to a lecture, it wasn't the end of the world because I had plenty more to go. So if you're looking for QuiltCon advice, I may have very minimal because I've only gone once, but that's something. So that said, let's talk about this week's project. I decided I needed a stash bust project. I needed it to be something I already had, and I need it to be something fast since I'm already almost through my first week and don't have anything to show for myself. So one of the online tutorials I've looked at a lot is Karen Brown from Just Get It Done Quilts. She calls it her ugly quilt. So it's basically taking a bunch of unloved, undesired fabric, sad fabric, which I have some, but I wanted to do something a little bit hard. Anyways, so it takes those fabrics, you chop them up, you get them all the same size, chop them up, flip, chop it, flip, and so you do all this scattering and then you kind of reassemble these blocks to make it look something cool. So I'm gonna do mine with some fabric that I had a lot of scraps left over from various projects, and I can actually confirm a couple projects that they're definitely from. Two quilts that I've made. One is the wedding quilt that I made for my friends Melissa and Jared. Their wedding colors were pink and gold, and I couldn't bring it was beautiful colors, but I couldn't bring myself to make a pink and gold quilt for their bed, knowing it would technically be halfway for Jared. So I went with something that I knew they were super fans of, and that is just nerdy things. So Jared and Melissa are very much, they're band kids just like me. They're very nerdy. They have their fandoms and their interests, and so I took all their fandoms, found some different fabrics, rubbed them all together, and put it together in this quilt. So I'll put the quilt that I made them here. Then the second quilt I made was for my sister's husband when he graduated from college. I made him a blue and gray themed Star Wars quilt in math. So I'm not going to use the math fabric for this. I'm going to use any Star Wars, so that's how he comes into play. I'll put that quilt here. And between those two quilts, I obviously have a lot of fabric scraps left over. And so I've got my box of Fandom fabrics. And so I'm going to see what size pieces I can have, and then we're gonna stack them and chop them and put them back together. And then I think this will end up making a really cool nerd fandom quilt for teenage boy, or I don't know. And it's one that I'm gonna donate. I think somebody that needs a quilt and needs a little nerd love in their life will get it. So I just opened this box for the first time since moving. It's still a mess over here, so we're not gonna dive over there yet. We'll come back to that. Right off the top, I've got Star Wars. I've got some Avengers. I've got some Slytherin. This was actually something I made my old roommate, Lorian. We were both Slytherins, so spoiler alert. I don't know if this piece is big enough. I'd like to do like a 16-inch block starting and then chop it down from there. I'd like these blocks to be big. I'm imagining either 4 by 4 or 4 by 5, but we'll see how many I get all together. We've got model face Thor. That's kind of weird. I don't know about that one. More Avengers. Actually, no. I'm gonna get in trouble for saying that. This is not no, it is Avengers. I was seeing X-Men on the bottom and that confused me for a second. Stormtroopers. More Thor. I've got these bags. I love this fabric. I haven't used it in much of anything, but I think it's so cute for being Avengers. They're all their little thingies, their little weapons. I think it's cute in a Thor sort of way. This bag is all Doctor Who. This bag is all various Star Wars. See, I was organized at one point. This bag is all Harry Potter strips. So I have a lot of strips left over from that first quilt because it was a scrappy strip quilt. This one is Legend of Zelda. And I've got some bigger pieces here. Bigger pieces of Doctor Who. More Avengers. So as you can see, more Avengers. I think we even have this one at the shop now. That's cool looking. More Avengers. So this looks like it's just gonna be an Avengers quilt, but nope. I've got Doctor Who here at the bottom, Harry Potter, more Legend of Zelda, more Star Wars, and I know I put a bunch of chunks in another bin over there. So from what I have organized, I'm gonna dive into those and we'll see what I find and how big my blocks can be. We've got to get sorting and pressing and then figuring out what my biggest square is going to be. So let's go. Okay, so I got everything all cut, and what I'm gonna go ahead and do now, because I had to like MacGyver some of my squares, I ended up doing 12.5 inch because some of my strips or my squares, my pieces were a lot smaller than the 14 I would have liked, or even 16. So I'm going to get these all separated out. I'm gonna see which ones I have the most of. My guess is it is obviously Avengers. And then I'm going to make 2 stacks alternating Avengers and another Fandom. And then we will go from there to do some slashing and putting back together. So now what we're going to do is I went ahead and I made sure all my directionals were actually going the same direction, which is quite a few of them. Stacked them all out, and I got the edge as evened up with each other as I could. There's obviously a reason why she has you stack and whack them all at once to get your squares, but I didn't have time for that because my pieces were all super weird sizes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a spot so we've got the bottom here. I'm going to do a weird angled chop here. Take the first one, flip it to the back, and then sew them all together. Same thing with this stack. As you can see, like these ones, this particular one, I didn't have a big enough piece, so this one's going to be a bottom piece, We're gonna pretend like they're the same, and then we're gonna flip the top one to the next and go from there, and then repeat the opposite angle there, then do the sides. She does the sides first, but since I had some weird bottoms that I had to mismatch, we're gonna do those first. So we're gonna chop these. I'm gonna get my sewing machine up here, and we're gonna see our first brick room sewing experience. Okay, if you saw that first batch that I cut, clearly I had some weird thing happen because I ended up with an extra. I thought I didn't trim a strip and I threw a random strip in there, so now there's an extra strip in one of the sets. I don't know what's happening. This is intense, but my second set went much better, so now I'm gonna iron those and we're gonna chop them and get sewing together again. So today we're just gonna jump back in. I've got the 2 more cuts and flips to make. This time I'm gonna flip the top 3 pieces to the back instead of just the first one. And then I will check in with you again when these blocks are all done. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up here. At this point, my blocks are all trimmed, both sets of them. And next video, we're gonna come back. I'm gonna find my design wall, which I know I've seen. I've touched it probably about 3 times going, I don't know where to put this yet. So I'm gonna get my design wall probably up. I think it'll fit in this little section right over here. I'll have to move that wrapping paper in this rolling caddy, but I think it'll fit over there. And so I can get these blocks up and organized and make a layout, and then we'll get a quilt top together and figure out how I'm gonna quilt it, and then it'll be done. I'll gotta figure out a binding. I'll probably just do like a black binding or something simple to just frame it all up since there's so many colors in there and everything. So stay tuned for the next video, but there you have the first section of the Fandom ugly quilt.